To the Muses by William Blake. Whether on Ida's shady brow, or in the chambers of the east, the chambers of the sun that now from ancient melody have ceased, whether in heaven ye wander fair, or the green corners of the earth, or the blue regions of the air, where the melodious winds have birth, whether on crystal rocks ye rove, beneath the bosom of the sea wandering in many a coral grove, fair nine, forsaking poetry, how have you left the ancient love that bards of old enjoyed in you? The languid strings do scarcely move. The sound is forced. The notes are few.
Greetings, friends. Welcome to the Pen Tool Podcast. My name is Al Wayman, owner of Creek Road Pottery in Laceyville, Pennsylvania, next to the cold Tuscarora Creek. Pull up a chair around the wheel as we discuss topics concerning the art and craft of pottery, good books, storytelling, marketing, and creating work that matters for folks who care.
Greetings, friends. Welcome to the Pen Tool Podcast. It has been such a long time, and this is Season 4, Episode 14. And I must say, I missed doing the podcast, and I missed hearing from everybody, and I've just been very busy. Not only with the fall shows that came my way, but also with overtime at the big paper factory. It's been very dry here, and the Tuscarora Creek is running kind of low, and tonight it's warm and very windy. So as we sit in the pottery shed on the last night of the fall show 2025, you will hear the wind whipping through the trees and around the pottery shed. An eerie howl. So the wind came up this afternoon, and luckily I was able to finish the raku firings that I was doing for demos for people when they'd come by. I had a bunch of smaller items that I put through the kiln as demos both yesterday and today, and that was a lot of fun. I was using this heavy copper glaze, and makes a nice shine on the pots if you do it right. And it took a lot of tries and the right thickness of the glaze, so it's a real finicky raku glaze. But I was able to pull those pots out of there, and then the wind started coming up. It started getting a little bit dangerous. I didn't want leaves to fly out and start a fire someplace. So I did the last load and turned the kiln off, and then let the wind whip. So something funny happened. I was getting ready to do a pull of pots out of the kiln, and I was putting on my safety gear. I have these sleeves that go over the heat or fire resistant shirt and jacket, and I put on the fire resistant sleeves and the heavy gloves. And as I was putting my hand into the heavy raku glove, there was a bee in there, right? So I put my hand on that bee, and you never probably seen anybody take a glove off so fast. Luckily, I was able to shake it out, and I did not get stung. But as soon as I felt it buzzing, I knew exactly what that was. So, had quite a few people come by the pottery shed for the 3 days of the October fall show on the Pumpkin Trail. And I don't like comparing to previous years because there are a lot of things that come into play year to year. And I am grateful to sell at least one thing. And so nobody owes me nothing. And the goal of every show is to sell one pot. Because one pot means you put in all the work to show up with one pot and maybe more, right? And sometimes, if you have a bad time, you may only have one pot left out of the kiln to bring. An example of that was when I was throwing some bowls. I made some nice salad bowls, and I was able to fire them all out in the bisque. None of them cracked, and I was all happy about it. I had probably about 20 of those bowls, and the rims on them were a bit wide, and they beautiful salad bowls. And I was trying to practice bowls that stack. So I was all proud. I got them bisqued, and I stacked them up, and I seen what I needed to do a little bit more to make them better. And then I glazed them all on the Thursday before the show. And then I sent them through the kiln. And then Friday morning, I took a sneak peek. Everything looked fine. And then when it came for showtime at 10 o'clock, I opened the kiln. It was cool enough. And then I found that a refire mug at the top shelf had exploded and sent shards all through the kiln in the updraft and ruined 18 bowls by baking shards in the glaze. So there are 18 bowls added to the cry pile out by my kiln. So every time I walk by, I just remember the mistake. I was able to throw the bowls correctly, get them all the way through the glaze load. The firing schedule I used in the gas updraft worked great, so I just need to repeat. I need to repeat all of that. Without the shards, right? So sometimes it's more about the process than the end result. And those bowls kind of proved that to me again. If I was all for end results, I would have rolled the kilns over the bank and quit a long time ago, friends. So I had the weekend before, the second week of October was the artist open house weekend, and I was out at the County Line Brewery, and that was a fun time. I was 3 days out there. This was a Saturday, Sunday, and Monday for the Columbus Day holiday, and quite a few people came out from the next county over, and I was able to sell quite a few pots. But the nice thing about being at the brewery was I was able to eat some really good pizza and drink some really good cider. Now, they say you probably shouldn't drink while you're trying to make sales, but being at the brewery, I found it very difficult. So I may have a problem, right? May have a problem. But it was a good problem to have, and the cider was amazing, and they brew it right there. So that was good. And so quite a few people came out, and I sold quite a few pieces of work. I sold 2 large raku vases, and so I was really happy about that. Because usually at these shows, I don't take too many larger pieces because sometimes they don't sell very well, and I'd rather take something that sells. But I decided to take the chance. I took some raku pieces, and the larger pieces sold 2 of them, so that was good. And then I came back, made pots for the fall show the following week. So I've been pretty busy trying to keep things filled and keep the sales going. So now I need to go ahead and start making for the Christmas show on Black Friday weekend. So hopefully I would like to really get some larger pieces out, because I think it's been quite some time since I made larger pieces, probably about 2 years. Just because with work and all, it's really hard to get the larger pieces through the kiln. But 2 years ago, I was looking back, and I had a really good show because people were lining up here early to buy the larger pieces, because not too many people create the larger pieces out here. Simply like the casserole dishes, and then pie plates, baking dishes, things like that. So I'm going to try to do that. Mixing bowls, need a lot of mixing bowls. So I might try to do that for Christmas and make a bit of a comeback here at Creek Road Pottery. So today, our topic is going to be on selling local, and we're going to be talking about collaborations with other businesses and how you can sell local and not totally rely on online and social media all the time. And one of the things I believe that is coming into play is how little reach we actually have on social media compared to before. And algorithms change all the time. But there are some things that you can do to pick yourself, right? To put yourself out there, take some chances, and look into maybe seeing if you could even put up a little tent along the road by your drive 2 days a weekend, 2 days a month, and sell. You know, it starts out small and then it can grow, right? You just need to let people know that you're there. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more. So go ahead and go get a coffee and meet me right back here in the pottery shed, and we'll talk about selling local and how to make that work, and we'll go over some ideas on maybe how to get the word out if you're thinking about selling local. All right, I'll see you then. Greetings, friends. Welcome back. Pull up a chair. There's plenty of room here in the pottery shed as it starts to rain outside and the wind is howling, but we're nice and dry inside. And the good part is I can look for leaks now in the pottery shed. I had one some time back, and my dad noticed it during a show. So bless his heart, he climbed up on the ladder and put a new shingle under there and tarred it up for me. So tonight's topic, we're going to talk about selling local. So a lot of times we might be a little leery to do that because we're putting ourselves out there. But I'm going to give you permission. And I'm going to give you permission to sell one pot local. Because the idea is, if you can show up with one pot and you put in all the work to get that one pot through the 10 processes that it takes to make that pot, and you get it out of the kiln in one piece, and you can say to somebody who cares, hey, look what I made. And if that person who cares decides to buy it, then you can sell not only one pot, but maybe two, because you just need to repeat that. So that may sound a bit simplified, and at times it can be. The problem is we always look back and maybe compare ourselves to either the past, to other people, to past shows. And the problem is there's always going to be someone better and bigger and also smaller than you. And there's also going to be some good years and terrible years, right? So I always, as a philosophy, try to take one pot forward. And if you do that, you start to realize that your future is built day by day, hour by hour, and minute by minute because of the choices we make, right? So just because you had a bad show last year, it doesn't mean that the same things need to be repeated. Because as we move forward with our one pot that we made to say, look what I made, to people who care, we can make choices. And in doing so, if we pick our customers, we're picking our future, right? And part of picking your future and part of picking people who care, they just might be your neighbors or the people up the road. Because I think that there's a lot of retaliation to social media starting to happen because people are just getting exhausted. Attention spans are getting shorter. I know even myself. I love books, friends, and I have a hard time sitting down and reading pages more than I used to. I used to sit for a long time. As a matter of fact, I used to shut the pottery down for like a whole 2 weeks to get through a good book. And I still read books, but I guess the thing is, I'm noticing that longer things are harder to get through for other people and people who are constantly on their phones. Now, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. It's just something that our society is having to cope and deal with or get used to, right? Because some of these things are like the weather, and they're here. We can talk about the weather, talk about how good or bad it is, but it's still happening around us, right? And so we need to be able to interact with those things. So I think that a lot of times in retaliation to social media that people are becoming exhausted with, they're going back to local handmade and seeing people face to face. And that might be a challenge for you to overcome. But you can do it one person at a time, and you're allowed to mess up. I give you permission to mess up face-to-face selling, right? So you take your one pot that you made and you show it to somebody who cares, and maybe they buy it. And then, if you get lucky, right, you can repeat that over and over. And then pretty soon, you've sold maybe 20, 30 pots to 20 or 30 people that cared, right? And to me, that's pretty amazing. So what I try to do is think about community. And for probably about the last 5 years, I've been trying to have community be part of the strategy on how things are run here. So a lot of times people will come and say, oh, why are they pots that matter? Well, because some of the revenue goes back into the community, and I make sure it does. And I make sure it goes back into the community in helpful and productive ways. And it could be in charitable form. If one of my neighbors has a house fire, right, I could kindly make a donation financially from the pottery with no strings attached, right? And whenever you reach out and do community work, it should be a selfless thing of generosity, because if you help others get what they want, they'll help you get what you want, and they will, for the most part, support you. So for the last couple of years, I've been on these trails, and the other businesses approached me and invited me on and to collaborate. And so the customers and our neighbors go place to place. They buy gifts, and they do the little trails, and they have the little door prizes, and it ends up being a lot of fun. It's a day out, the winery's on it, and they can just enjoy the nice fall weather or the spring weather, and that ends up being a time to visiting people that you might not always visit. So that's one thing that you could do. You could sit down and ask yourself, how many handmakers are in my community? And would it be possible for a Saturday and a Sunday to collaborate with 5 or 10 other businesses and create some fun trail. Now, unfortunately, because these trails have been going on for so long, some of the shops, the owners are retiring, some businesses are selling, some others closed, and so they're dropping off, and not too many are coming back on to maintain the support of the trails. So then you have to move into other locals selling, like maybe doing custom orders. Not the customs where they come and tell you. However, you can do things that are very different from what's normally done and become very good at that thing. Kind of like a plumber that's super good, and you heard from your friends. And when you get that leak on your kitchen sink and it's plugged up and you don't feel like crawling under there, and you don't feel like crawling under there, right? You call up your buddy and you're like, hey, Janice, do you know anybody? And they're like, we know somebody. So they will send them over. And hopefully they get the job done. And they might not be cheap, right? You might have to pay them, but you're happy to pay them for the work that they do because they did the job. Because Janice said that they were good and they would. And you can trust Janice, right? So that's how it would work. So my idea is I might start doing custom orders for a few friends at first, and family. So my uncle just put in a brand new house in New Hampshire, and my Aunt Linda just retired. She put a new cabin in up in upstate New York. So those are 2 things that I could do as practice to put out there and practice plates, and run them through the kiln, get a really nice plate setting, and say, hey, Uncle Ray, this is something that I wanted you to have as a housewarming gift. And maybe someday, you can pass it down to the kids if all the plates don't crack while you're washing them in the sink, right? But something like that, or a mixing bowl. It doesn't have to be anything huge. And then from that, they tell their friends, and their friends come over for dinner, and maybe they want one too now, right? So my Uncle Ray will know a guy, and my Aunt Linda will know a guy, and that guy will be me. And if I can continue that whole thing, I'm choosing who I want to make work for, right? So I'm picking my customers, and it will start with those closest to me. And so that's another thing that you could do, because the plumber, he probably has more jobs than he can actually maintain, because a lot of people know somebody, and his calendar might be filled up. A good doctor, you're not going to be able to get in to see him, right? Because his calendar's filled up. If he was a doctor that did a bad job, you would find out about that too, right? So it works both ways. So you just have to be conscious that when you become exceptionally well at doing a thing, you need to maintain that type of quality and that type of service. And hopefully you're able to do that with empathy and generosity and with gratitude. And so if you mix those 3 things in with selling local, either on some trail or doing work that people may enjoy and that you can delight people with, they will come find you because they know somebody. Another thing that you could do is you could set up, if your homeowners association, the HOA, right? If the HOA allows you to, you could set up a little tent right in your yard. And nothing's saying that you can't walk to your neighbors and be like, hey, I'm having this little pottery sale. And I made like a kiln load of mugs and bowls. And is what it is. Like, they might not be the best things, but how about you come by Saturday? I got cookies and coffee, and I want you to check out some pots and some work that I made. And you start with your one pot, right? Because if your neighbor stops by and she likes the little pet bowl that you made, right? She might tell her friend about it, and then that neighbor might stop over too. So it all ends up being like this chain reaction in a way. And if we don't show up with the one pot on our table first, we're not going to be able to show up with the second one. And a lot of times, the muse doesn't help us. The muse doesn't help us until we actually start the first actions, right? She will wait by our wheel. She will wait by our wheel and hope that we start. Then when we start, she'll help us. And the inspiration comes. We should not wait for the muse. We should start on time. Life is too short not to start, right? So if we sat and we waited to be inspired, or we needed certain conditions to be inspired, we might waste time and waste precious minutes of our lives when we could have had things done, and we could have been doing things that mattered already. We waited for those conditions to be right. And friends, those conditions will never be 100% right. And many times I will sit down and know that I should make pots. I don't feel like making pots. So I start doing the easiest thing ever, like maybe a 1 poundy bowl, right? And that's how you start. You just make the one. And then after you made one, the muse might be there to help you to make two. And then after you make two, you can make 10. And soon you got a wear board, right? So then, because you didn't feel like it, you have a wear board of pots. And it might not have been enjoyable, but you still went to work that day. And you probably didn't have an enjoyable time, but you still had to show up, right? And how much better it is, and how lucky we are to be able to show up for ourselves, right? Because we don't know how much time we have left, and life is far too short not to show up for ourselves. And if we don't show up for ourselves, who will show up for us, right? If not now, when? And if not us, who will do it? So we have to do it. So you can get on a little trail, create one yourself. You don't need permission. You could be a leader. You can say, hey, I want to do this. Who wants to help me? And then you'd be surprised at how many people would enjoy helping you. Or you can say, hey, I want to make this. Who around me would care if I made this? And then you show it to them. Or you could say, I'm going to set up a table at my driveway, and I'm going to see who's going to come by. I'm going to set up a table. You start out small at the high school gym for like $30, right? For craft day. I think a lot of times people get really picky about where they would like to sell their things. And they listen to the professionals. And while what they say is true, right? All these starting out stages we're all in different areas doing different things for different reasons. And I've made out fairly decent, for sure, at a little pop-up gallery that happened in a fire hall for a craft fair than at some of the bigger places I went to, right? I remember this one time way back, story time. Remember this one time way back, there was this lady, I call her Painter Deb. Painter Deb, she had a pop-up art gallery in my little town. And she was a part of an art association. But I wasn't a part of the art association. And I showed up and I said, "Hi, Deb. I heard that you were having the pop-up gallery because you printed off all these little papers and put them up all over town, right? And I read that. And I would like to participate, but I'm not part of the association." And Deb said, "All right, bring your pots down anyways, and I will give you a table, no charge." And I was like, "Deb, are you sure?" And she said, "Yes." I never forgot that, friends, because it was the first sale that I ever made here making pots 10 years ago. Probably 12 years ago, because I was making pots 2 years before I started the pottery here. And it was right around Mother's Day, and I took the pots down there, and I put them up on the little table. And I didn't sell anything at Deb's pop-up that day. But I met a lot of other artists. And then the next year, for Mother's Day, Deb had another pop-up. And I made like $500 on that one, and I was feeling pretty good. So you never know. And sometimes it takes time. But you did a lot better at practicing showing up with one than not showing up at all, right? So, friends, I guess I'm going to leave you with the idea of showing up with one and starting with one and selling with one. Because if you can sell with one, if you can start with one, and if you can make one, then you could do two. If you can do two, you can do 10. If you do 10, you can do hundreds, right? So, I guess that's the lesson. I ended up giving my chatbot Amelia the night off. She's been helping me with these shows, and they're relentlessly patient. So the AI was not exhausted, but I kind of wanted a quiet time away after all the hubbub. So it was nice to come back to the podcast and sit with you all and have a coffee. Speaking of coffee, I ended up buying coffee from some friends in Virginia that roast coffee. And they used to be in the same religious movement as I was, but we have both since left, and now we both make pots, and they roast coffee, and they get it fair trade, and so they roast it for me, and I buy 2 bags a month, and it is good coffee. And their little shop, their little pottery is called Beautiful Coffee and Pottery. So if you go on Etsy and you type in Beautiful, F-A-L-L, pottery, their names will come up. It's Baz and Ashley Fall, and they're there in West Virginia, and they roast coffee, and you can tell them that Creek Road Pottery sent you over, and you would like to try a bag, and I'm sure they would be happy to help you out. All right, so I guess that was my little ad. I've been making some apps, me and Amelia, the chatbot, and we have a couple apps on the website that we made for potters. I'm not saying that they're awesome apps, right? I'm not saying they're awesome apps because I'm much better at making pots than I'm at making apps. But a couple weeks back, I got the flu. And my whole vacation, one of them was taken up with the flu. But as I had the flu, I worked creating some pottery apps that you all might enjoy. One is a cost analysis app, so you can put in all kinds of things to figure out how much it costs per piece for you to make. And then there's a app on there for firing out wood kilns, keeping track of information for wood kilns, loads of things. And then there's a pottery app journal and strategy app in there. So if you click on that, it will help you figure out themes for shows, all kinds of things. So Amelia, the chatbot, my program manager and my project manager has been helping me, and we have been working with Claude and ChatGPT to code some pottery apps. And they're all on there for free. I am not looking to get rich. If I wanted to be rich, I would have been a hedge fund manager at Goldman Sachs, right? But instead, I'm making pots, I'm writing, and I'm making apps for people who care and for potters like yourself, because I think there's a need for that out there. So if you click on my website and go to the apps, you click on the app link and go to that page. It'll load. It might take a minute. If it's asleep, it'll load, and then you can use that app both on your mobile phone and on your desktop. So feel free to give me feedback on them if you happen to go over and check them out and see what they're like. And feel free to go over and get some coffee off Ashley Fall. I'm sure they would appreciate it down there in Virginia. All right, friends. So until next time, be well and create work that matters for people who care.